Hello, everybody. You might have heard that I got censored for a comedy video that was also journalism exposing the Netflix walkout leader, Ashley Marie Preston, for her bigoted tweets. That video was removed by Facebook and on Reddit. But before we get to that story, I've got my friend Alison Morrow, who apparently has the same, taste and color patterns as I do.
We're in our theater mime, wardrobe today.
All black, a little blue for a little, a little flavor. So Allison's has a story of censorship, which is even more insane, actually. And she just went public yesterday. She was working at for the Washington state government, and she got fired just last week for her independent journalism. So, Alison Morrow, tell us about that.
It's time for you to up your game, Matt. It's not cool to just only get suspended. You got to get fired too, apparently.
You know that's happened to me.
Oh yeah, that's true. You already have gotten fired.
Yeah, you're catching up to me.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. Who was I to think I came before you? So what happened is that I got suspended from YouTube. I feel like every good story starts there, right? I got suspended from YouTube about a month ago for a video I did with the medical ethics director at the University of California, who is suing the University of California over their vaccine mandate because he is citing his natural immunity. Not that controversial. Didn't think there was anything big about that, but YouTube thought it was medical misinformation. So they struck it, they took it down, and then they suspended me from my channel. I go to Twitter, as you and I often do, to kick up the dirt and let people know what's going on and alert YouTube, hey, your AI flagged this and it shouldn't have, and make our case. It's the only way we really can get a hold of them. So that tweet got hundreds of retweets. And what I had said in that tweet is that you may think that there aren't doctors or scientists who are pushing back on these mandates, but it's probably because you're not allowed to hear what they have to say because they're being censored. YouTube saw that and did restore my video, and they apologized and they said it was an error in the vetting process, and they have shared it with the right people, and they let me back into my channel. But with the publicity that situation got, I don't know, but a few days later, I got a call from my bosses at the Washington Department of Natural Resources, and they said, you need to stop doing all videos related to COVID, the vaccines, mandates that they said undermined the policy at DNR. And the policy at DNR is that all staff had to be vaccinated by October 18th.
And this Department of Natural Resources, right?
Right.
So
and I can tell you a little bit about what they do, if that would be helpful to people.
Well, yeah, sure. Because I think, as messed up as it is to force people to, inject something into their bodies or fire them, that threat, that's messed up. But there might be some argument if you're working in maybe the health, Department of Health. I can see the government having some argument and maybe even winning in court. But your work for the state government had absolutely nothing to do with the health policy, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So
yeah.
The Department of Natural Resources oversees, they call it trust lands in the state. So they're state lands that are managed actually for timber sales, for profit, to fund schools in Washington. The other thing, and aquaculture areas too, water areas for aquaculture, and basically the profits go towards funding schools in Washington. But my job was focused on their other really big responsibility, which is wildland firefighting and forest health management. And so DNR is the wildland firefighting force for Washington state. And I was tasked with telling the stories about wildfire, mostly related to what the firefighters are doing, what the forest health and fuels crews are doing, meaning reducing the fuels load in the forest so that we won't have such big fires. And, you know, every once in a while talking about like a bark beetle story or something that may be related to how to prepare to evacuate, but nothing related to COVID. And I didn't discuss my role doing those wildfire videos. I never discussed my role in my COVID videos that I was doing on my personal social media platforms on my personal time.
Yeah.
And so my argument when I was told to cease and desist was that A, I have a First Amendment right to continue. I'm a government employee, and that I'm doing this. These videos are on my personal time, on my personal gear, and that frankly, I'm sharing the stories and the ideas and viewpoints of a variety of scientists and doctors. And as an agency that is based in science, that would align with my videos. That was my argument.
Yeah, and also what I find interesting, I mean, there's so many things that is interesting and ridiculous and effed up about this. Well, one, I mean, just the logic that if you're working at some government, for the government in any field, any way, and you make content on the side in your own goddamn time that they don't like, or that is not in line with the government, for you to lose your job, that is incredible. That is I hope you do take this to court, because I think you will win. You should win, and people need to know about this this abuse of power that the Washington State's government is trying to, you know, there's this abuse, this power that they're clearly trying to abuse. Now, also interesting how I did not know that YouTube had actually, so they're concerned with some videos that YouTube had initially taken down, but even YouTube put it back up. So it's okay
Right.
for you. So their standards are even higher than YouTube's, and YouTube standards are very stringent.
Mhm.
Very go ahead.
So their argument is that I was on the communication staff and that I was allowing other people to communicate ideas that challenged or undermined their vaccine mandate. So it wasn't even specifically me. It was the people I was associating with publicly that they were telling me they were concerned about. For instance, Dr. Cariotti, the medical ethics director I just told you about. Also, I was specifically told that a COVID ICU doctor, Molly James, that was another concern of theirs. She had quit her position as an ICU doctor in New York after having treated COVID patients for the last 18 months. And she quit over the mandates that New York put in place. So she was one of those healthcare workers that New York lost over their mandates. Those were two specifics that I was told were unacceptable.
Yeah, so these are people with serious credentials, and they just have an alternative view on COVID. And in your own time, you discussed the COVID with these individuals. That's it. And I mean, just everyone out there, just imagine, like, all right, so if you're anyway, like, you take this, you think about this, like, oh, like, so a post office, a postal worker, any government employee, just talking about things that the government does not would rather them not talk about. And that's what they told you. They said, we'd rather you not talk about this, although I guess they did eventually tell you not to. And I have one email here. What's great about this case is all, you know, there's tons of emails and it's all public record. So you sent me this one. Let me bring it up. And let's see if I can zoom into that a bit. So what's this first one here, Allison? I'll read it as I open it up a bit. Well, I'm gonna have to zoom. Yeah,
it's okay. Yeah, while you're working on that,
here you go. I'll read it. You translate. So here's an email to Allison. The expectation is that you refrain from creating new videos or social media content that undermines DNR's position and policies. on COVID safety or explicitly or implicitly promotes, amplifies COVID misinformation. Now, everybody, remember, DNR's position, their position and policies on COVID. Do they even have a position on COVID, Allison? This is the Department of Natural Resources.
Well, actually, what's interesting, Matt? When
What?
I asked Human Resources for the official policy, I should have sent you this as well, but the Human Resources agent wrote me back and said, there is no official policy. And I said, will there be an official policy by the deadline? This was related specifically to the mandate, because I wanted to see it in writing, what it was exactly. And she said, not that I'm aware of. So that was what I was told by HR. So I actually don't really know what to tell you about that, other than that the rule was that everybody had to be vaccinated by the 18th. And when you read here that I'm supposed to refrain from creating new videos or social media content, they said my old videos could stay up, but I just had to cease and desist in the future. So that's what they're talking about there. And specifically, right, it says undermines DNR's position and policies on COVID safety, or explicitly or implicitly promotes, amplifies COVID misinformation. So see what they're saying?
Yeah.
In other words, when they say implicitly, what was communicated to me was your guests concern us. So the people you're associating with are unacceptable for us. Too.
Again, these are just credentialed people who have a different opinion on the handling of the COVID crisis. That's it.
Those were the people that, those are the people that they specifically named. But let me ask you a question, Matt. What do you think? Say I just had you on my channel, which I have, right? and you said, well, I'm Matt and I think whatever. So you're not necessarily a doctor, but what do you think about...
yeah, it makes no difference. I don't think that makes a difference in this case at all. You know, you should be able to discuss whatever the hell you want with whoever the hell you want in your own free time and not be fired from your government job. I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, that's the whole point of the First Amendment. I mean, and I mean, among many other important points and reasons for the First Amendment, but that's one of the big ones. And incredibly, my mind is boggled that they're saying that you're not allowed to create content in your own friggin' time that explicitly or implicitly promotes or amplifies COVID misinformation. And YouTube, who is so strict on this, they didn't even, they didn't consider it misinformation. They put it back up. I mean,
they put it back up. Yep. That's true. You're right. I've had one video removed from YouTube that they didn't restore, but all the other ones that I have up there, even the ones that they originally got strikes, were restored. So yeah, you're right. They're still on YouTube.
So, I mean, it's just absurd. So then, it really... Did they say how it violated their policy?
Well, go read that next sentence.
Okay, here we go. This includes, but is not limited to, misinformation about vaccines, vaccine requirements, masks, or mask requirements. Yeah, that's weird. Not limited. So even YouTube isn't that bullshit. I don't think. YouTube's fairly, or at least more specific than that. They list.
Well, yeah. The way I read that is like, we could expand this.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah. Man. So, I mean, if it was anything on this list, I mean, YouTube has pretty much validated you in that you did not violate any of these things. And having brought back multiple videos, at least, right?
Right. Well, according to YouTube, there's a difference between... And this may not be the case 6 months from now, and it's definitely arbitrarily enforced, but there's a difference between a valid opinion and perspective on something versus just a flat out piece of misinformation. Now, absolutely, we constantly point out, you and I and others point out how their misinformation terminology, how they differentiate between different opinion and misinformation is so arbitrary and does not really reflect actual misinformation, right? But when it comes to not wanting your policy to be challenged or undermined, that was what was communicated to me was not necessarily that these people didn't have a scientific perspective that was valid, but that perspective undermined the policy. So does that make sense? Like in YouTube,
well, no, it doesn't. I mean, on a common sense level, but I get, that they're saying, like, even if it was scientifically valid, your bosses were saying that if in any way it doesn't matter if it's valid, if in any way it undermines our messaging, you're not allowed to work here for even listening to somebody about that, which is what you were doing. You just had someone on, and you were listening to them. Am I getting this right? Or
listening? Yes, yes, that's true. I was listening. Yes, that's what that email says. That's what they told me, that it undermines their policy, and that I was on their communication team, and my communication, indirectly or directly, needs to be aligned with their public policy, even in my free time.
And they go on, okay, third sentence. Additionally, the expectation is that creating any video content will not be produced, edited, or in any way worked on during DNR business hours. But you weren't doing that, correct?
I wrote them back and said I was more than happy to comply with maintaining my work on my personal time with my personal equipment, because that had been my practice. So that was no problem for me. I said I'd absolutely comply with that. I would not comply with the censorship of the nature of the content.
Mm-hmm. And then final paragraph, unrelated from our conversation yesterday and the expectations outlined above. They end with their DNR's vaccine policy, which requires all employees, including yourself, to get vaccinated. Now, interestingly, you mentioned so that you got fired at the same time that they let go a lot of people because they refused to get the vaccine, correct?
Either refused or refused to report their status. Right.
Okay. And but you're saying in your case, it has nothing to do with this at all, though, with their vaccine policy. It's completely different. Reason they fired you, correct?
They wrote me and said you were terminated because of inappropriate use of social media.
And it's an email. It's an email, everyone. This is incredible. It's an email. As discussed, you were terminated due to inappropriate use of social media. Whoa! The government. Oh, it's telling you can get fired, terminated for inappropriate use of social media. According to them, it's appropriate according to the already very stringent, super strict, guidelines, increasingly strict guidelines of social media, Facebook, YouTube. But man, your termination would and then it specifically says very clearly your termination was not related to the vaccine mandate. Wow.
What? And the middle part where it talks about being exempt and at will, my understanding is that what that means is that they don't have to tell you why they fired you. So they could just say you're fired. It doesn't mean that you can just fire somebody for whatever you want if it's a violation of the law.
And is it because you're not in a union? Is that?
That's essentially what it means. Yeah. I was not in a union. And when you're at will, that just means at the will of the person who hired you, they can will you to go away. but they don't have to tell you and go through that. Yeah. Whatever the protected process is for people who are in a union, they don't have to tell you That's my understanding. I'm not an employment lawyer, but that's my understanding. But it doesn't mean that you can be fired in violation of the Constitution of the United States.
So this is a pretty big deal, as we've discussed. Are you committed to taking this to court? I really think you have an incredibly strong case. And, are you concerned at all about any backlash? I know you just went public yesterday, but I mean, what are your thoughts going forward?
The whole reason that I refuse to comply and that I'm speaking up now is to protect our First Amendment right to dissent or to question or to associate, to be able to speak out about what we think and to listen to what others have to say, and to show people that there are real risks to doing so, and that may be one reason why you're not hearing as many people say, I also agree with this person, or I disagree, or it may be the reason you're not getting the variety of opinion and scientific thought, because people are scared because they could lose their job, and they do lose their job. And so I'm considering my options right now for what to do moving forward. Obviously there's a lot to consider. I've had to figure out what we're going to do for health insurance. That's one thing that when you lose your job, you gotta find health insurance. And so that's very expensive.
Sorry to cut you off. Just like the idea that you're fired for undermining like public health policy. So fuck you. You don't get any health insurance anymore. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Well, it's just there are a lot of unknowns. And so I got it. Like you're like on one hand, you're a public figure, right? In this regard, like I do YouTube. You and I have done videos together. And so when people like yourself want to talk about it, I'm happy to talk about what happened, because I think it's important for people to know what's going on behind the scenes. On the other hand, I have a whole life I have to figure out now. I had to figure out so many different things. And so I also am a mom, and full-time mom, really, at the same time that I'm doing all this stuff. And so there's just a lot to consider, and a lot to try to just to stay calm and make sure that you're thinking logically about everything. And I think that's really the most important for me, as far as just carrying myself through this, is just making sure that I'm sticking to the facts here. I'm telling what happened, how it was communicated to me. And if that story is of value to others, just to say, hey, you're not alone. I understand now. I know what people are going through when you just see headlines that are like 70,000 workers, healthcare workers, dismissed from New York hospitals. And it's just a number, but you don't think about all of those families and the conversations they're having about, what are we going to do for healthcare? Are we going to be able to pay our bills? These are things that you can probably forget about easily when it just becomes number after number, headline after headline. And it's like, now I know what it's like behind the scenes to be somebody who loses their job over this. Again, different than the mandates, but speaking about that, or allowing other people to speak about it. So as far as your question about what could happen, retaliation or whatever else in the days to come, or weeks, months, I just am going to keep sticking to the truth. I'm going to tell people what happened, and I'm not going to worry about that side of things, because honestly, I won't be the first person who's stuck up for free speech, who has suffered negative consequences from that, and I'm sure I won't be the last. And that is always going to be more important to me it will always, that principle will always be more important to me than smear campaigns, than even my salary. That's what I said as on my way out. My parting words really were that I stand by what I've done. The principle of it, I stand by the First Amendment, and I'm just not going to comply with censorship. I just, it's just so ironic, Matt, if you think about it. One of my main foci on my vlogs is censorship. So it's
Yeah.
like, well, I had the very choice to make, I guess, that many of the people who have been featured on my vlogs have made. And it wasn't even just for me, but in honor of them too, and the risks that they've taken. And I really think we align in our hope that someday there won't be this kind of risk, that you will be able to speak up differently. You will be able to hear a variety of thought, and it won't come with the consequence of social ostracization, losing your job, losing your health care, that we will be able to reclaim an environment where speech is allowed.
Yeah. I'm seeing in the comments a lot of people saying they do support you, and some just taking the lead and saying they'd support a GoFundMe for you if you do decide to take this to court. So
Well,
that's
that's nice of them.
that is nice, and hell, I'll throw in a few bucks myself. And also speaking of a few bucks, everybody, if you want to, donate on, Super Chat or Rumble Rants on Rumble, preferably Rumble Rants. They pay us a little more, pay a higher percentage than YouTube. Big plus for Rumble, in addition to them not censoring your shit like YouTube. And I also want to say that obviously misinformation is a problem. And it's not just COVID misinformation, but the way you fix the best way, the way to address misinformation is to allow for more speech, not less speech. Someone makes something that's not right, make a goddamn video telling people why it's wrong. And we've got the biggest, richest institutions in the country, if not the world, with Google, Facebook, and they have all this money, and they could create their own goddamn content if they wanted to fight misinformation. But no, they're taking away content, and the federal government is helping them out. The Biden administration said they are working with Facebook to remove what they say is misinformation. So I'm going to move from Washington state government. We're going to move to how I was just censored this week by Facebook and Reddit. And here, I'll show you a little. I have a little article here. So the Netflix walkout leaders' racism and homophobic tweets were censored by Facebook and Reddit. So just so people understand, there's talking about correcting misinformation. So this Netflix walkout protest, they reported in the mainstream media that over 1,000 people would be there. All you had to do was just look at the official Facebook event and see there were 6 people RSVP'd at the time. And it ended up with 28 people. That's how many people went total. And eventually it got reported accurately. Just dozens of people, not over 1,000. Anyway, so I'm going to play this quick video, 2 minutes. This is what got censored. So this is the leader.
And I'm the organizer for.
There you go. She's the organizer for the Netflix walkout against Dave Chappelle's new Netflix special, and basically against jokes. The Washington Post has her saying that those jokes, according to this woman, Ashley McPreston, jokes lead to violence. And Dave Chappelle's show, leads to hate. and literal violence. Well, guess what? She has a history of tweets going back from 2011 to 2018, which ain't that far away, long ago, where she was expressing a lot of bigotry and even bragging about violence. So here we go. This is the video that was removed after going viral.
I'm Ashley Marie Preston, and I'm the organizer for the Stand Up and Solidarity Rally. My entire career, everything that I've done has been about pushing boundaries. It has been about holding people accountable.
I just cussed that Asian bitch clean the fuck out.
We expect more.
You mess up my order and then blame me? English is my first language, bitch.
And so,
I know it's a lot to ask in California, but speak fucking English. Yet I said it.
we also pour social equity into these spaces. We
Just broke my phone on this Asian bitch's head.
Dave
Sorry, I gotta say this, but California, she's talking about telling people in California, everyone's got to learn how to speak English. She, just before this, as the camera's going towards her, I hear her say, speaking to another reporter, bragging about how she's the first trans woman to run for public office. And it was in California. And then she has all these feelings about Californians. Anyway, here we go. Here we go. Continue. She just is talking about Dave Chappelle now.
Chappelle doesn't get to suck all of the light out of that. And so the thing that I felt most troubled by is
Latino and Asian businesses need to stop being rude and fucking disrespectful.
they don't have the same equity.
This Asian nigga in Subway got a fat ass.
They don't have the same opportunity.
He almost looks like a bitch from behind. Hashtag shaking my head.
We will no longer stay silent.
Asian hoes act like they won't get karate chopped in they motherfucking throat.
Just to be clear,
In real life, I'd smash your fucking head in. Like a can of A&W root beer. Dick Rider.
real violence that is by the trans community, for the trans community,
Bro, I would beat the dog shit out of you. Dick Rider.
to understand intersectionality and what it means.
I have Asian friends, but they some motherfucking weirdos sometimes. Hashtag I said it but we all think it.
Obviously, Ashley Marie Preston is a great advocate.
Furry slipper wearing ass fuck boy. Keep pretending for the internet. Dick Rider.
Ashley Marie Preston has proven herself as an activist, also a friend and a loved one to many people in her embarkment on activism. So thank you so much.
These motherfuckers. Faggot cocksuckers. Fat Mexican piss blonde Miss Piggy looking bitch. I love strippers. Not in like a gay way. I love gay men, but this county clerk at Window G is a motherfucking faggot.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
That is the last time I helped that faggot fucker.
So for those of us who are standing in solidarity with the trans employees,
Another. Damn. Asian almost hit me while crossing. What the fuck is with y'all and damn vehicles? Hashtag racist ass. I don't do Mexican, Asian, or Samoan.
we need to have difficult and complex conversations.
You should be ashamed if you take abortion pills like Flintstone vitamins.
All right. It actually goes on for a little longer on the full version. Rumble. You go ahead.
Can I just say, Matt, that the creative license, your hand in that really made that video, because we talked about this before, but the robot voice and then the music, it diffused what would have been, I think, like a highly emotionally reactive way of, and it like a lot of people are laughing at it because it was just so insane to see that. And I like also how you built to the crescendo where it was like you'd have a couple words the robot would read, and then she would say something and a couple words, and then it was just like it's like July 4th fireworks where it's a few and then a few more, and then at the end it's just like bang 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 bang, just fireworks. And you built up to the crescendo of it. You did a great job with the video.
Thank you. And yeah, we as we discussed before, it was off camera, so I'll mention it now. But I appreciate your appreciation of the music choice and the kind of the lightness of it all, because a lot of people, and these terrible political campaigns, they would put like evil music under it. You know what I mean? Like to try and I don't want to villainize her. I don't. I want to laugh about it. So that, so we can just laugh and just realize how ridiculous it is for so many, people. Increasingly, it seems to be like in the activist community that are, trying to basically preaching to other people and scolding other people for things that they have done far worse and never actually even apologized for it. They don't actually seem to have any real regret. She hasn't expressed any real regret even. She, what she did is come out with a statement saying that she was addicted to drugs at the time. Even though, I mean, so there's no apology in that. And also, that's kind of like the normal thing, like in Hollywood, something bad happens. Like, you go to, it's like, oh, I can go to rehab base. You can't tag me. That's actually a Chappelle commentary.
Let's just say that was true.
Well, also, I gotta say, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, where's the empathy then when the tables are turned and the mob is going, the power mob is going after the little guy, but they don't allow for there to be any sort of history or context or backstory or whatever. So it's like they get the backstory, they get the context, but they don't give that to their adversary.
Yeah, and like, I don't think people should be like fucking flooding her with these tweets for infinity, but she's talking about Dave Chappelle's hateful speech and how it's
like
causing
trying to
violence.
cancel him. Yeah, they're trying to cancel him. So,
and not just cancel him. I'm sure a lot of them would actually deny that they're like trying to cancel him, although many will admit it. But she would frame it probably as he needs to be held accountable. And it's just, but has she ever been held accountable? How has she been held accountable? I mean, just freaking acknowledge it instead of like dodging it. And also she said, she went to rehab blah, 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 years ago, but that still doesn't cover the worst of the tweets, which were actually 2018. So anyway, all right.
So
that was
so you didn't even go into what did Facebook label that video?
Yeah. So that was censored. So Facebook labeled my video exposing hateful language to be hate speech. And here you go. And this is what it says. It says it goes against our standards on hate speech and inferiority. So it actually seems like that might be mimicking one of Reddit's old rules that they quickly reworded, which basically said that, people are protected of certain races, ethnicities, religious affiliation, sexual orientation, gender identity, and it actually said this does not protect majorities. It actually said that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now there was some big backlash about that. And so that was reworded last year by Reddit, like almost immediately. But I still feel that honestly, it seems like that's still the unwritten rule by, in the media and in big tech, in their enforcement of, content that they see. So even though it was written very briefly by Reddit. So anyway, so at the bottom of this, it says, we allow things that we'd otherwise consider hate speech. For example, when someone shares someone else's hate speech to raise awareness about it. And that is exactly what I did in that video. That's exactly what I did. And what happened, Allison? I challenged Facebook's decision at 8:45 p.m. At 8:49 p.m., less than 5 minutes later, Facebook denied my appeal. And you can see the times. It's in the confirmation notification. You can see the times.
So how do you fight back against Facebook? I've never taken to the internet to fight them. Is Twitter the best way to do it? I know that's what we do with YouTube.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the only way to fight back is to have some other platform to get the word out. Because obviously I can't get the word out on fucking Facebook. And I mean, I've tried, and I'll tell you the results of that. But, luckily we have other platforms like, Rumble, and I know you're on Is
Locals.
What is it? Locals. That's right. And they actually just
Rockfin,
merged.
Rockfin too.
So now here's I got to tell you, Allison, there's so many crazy things about this. I've been censored on Facebook before, and things really are getting worse. There's some like bullshit talk, like, oh, they're becoming more transparent. No, things are getting way worse and much more opaque, to the point where we're in a goddamn, like, there's completely memory holding stuff. And is your producer
No, I was going to send you that Glenn Greenwald article so that you could see.
Oh, about the Facebook whistleblower.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find it so I can send you the right one. But he wrote a pretty good, here it is. He wrote a pretty good article on the funding behind the whistleblower, the Facebook whistleblower, and
did he say
ties to corporate news. I sent it to you in the private chat.
Okay. Does it say anything, or have you heard anything about this whistleblower, like talking about how, Facebook is taking actions to be more transparent? I've heard bullshit like that. I don't know if it's come from the whistleblower, but this is why I bring up, the level of Facebook or lack of Facebook transparency. Okay, look at this here. I'll show you what it looks like now that it's been removed. So this is what it looks like. Now, I can't see anything on my end. In my own video library, I should at least see some remnants of it, right? And when I was censored before, you could see like the column that had views and the column that had the title. The thumbnail was gone. That was kind of, it's still freaky, but you could still see some remnants that it existed. There's no mention of what video was removed in the notifications that they removed content. That whole thing that's saying it removed hate speech, it doesn't say what video it is. It's not documented in there. They've completely wiped like any record of it existing, to the fact that even people who shared it previously, this is the notification. So again, it doesn't show them what used to be there. Now that used to be the case on Facebook here. So you used to see a message saying, and it said clearly your post was removed. It doesn't even say that now. You also could see the original post. You could, as the poster. Now, other people can't see it, but at least you could as the poster. So there's a record, right? And you can share the screenshot around. So there's a record. You don't have that anymore, and that is terrifying.
Yeah.
This is what it looks like now. There's no image, there's no title. It just says this content isn't available at the moment.
At the moment.
That's so ridiculous. And then it primes everybody to think that I took it down myself. It goes, when this happens, it's usually because the owner only shared it with a small group of people, or changed who can see it, or it's been deleted. So the prime everybody thinks, oh, it's something I did, the owner did. Facebook didn't censor it. I just think that's incredible and scary.
I see what you mean when you're saying like they're not really being more transparent, even though they're saying they're being more transparent. Because now, how do you have a record of what happened to you that you can fight back? Yes. You can't fight back unless there's a record, right, of what happened.
Yeah, I mean, most people. Yeah, I mean, and also, although I will say, they used to take stuff down and they wouldn't even tell you what it was for. Like it would just be the general community standard. So in that sense, that's an improvement. But this is so freaky. It's an overall, decline, because if there's no record, that's literally memory holding stuff.
Well, it seems like whenever those running the show want to create chaos, this is how they do it. And it feels like it's a divide and conquer tactic, because if you can leave you leave the hole there for like what it could be, and then so people start coming up with ideas, and then they kind of create a chaos that then they have to control. So it's like I feel like this is becoming more and more standard practice, where chaos is not just allowed, but almost incited by these companies, intellectual, ideological, or like speech. It's just like everybody, and then they go, oh, now we gotta come in and control this. They create their own problem. And I feel like when they do stuff like this, like you said, it really cuts your ability to be able to fight back because but also it creates chaos among the users who then start fighting with each other. That's not true. You just made that up. They're not really doing that. They're just trying to protect us and blah, blah, blah. And then we all just start arguing with each other and it takes the attention away from them. I do feel like it's a divide and conquer tactic. But hey, Matt, see my screen that I'm sharing with you in the bottom there?
Chat.
Look under our StreamYard and you should see a square that's my screen. That's white. You see it? I'll read it. I'm going to read what I'm looking at.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
This is the Greenwald article. So he's talking about the Facebook whistleblower and that the paper, she's talking to the New York Times. The paper also confirmed that the firm masterminding Haugen's public campaign rollout and complex media strategy, a group founded by the former Barack Obama aide Bill Burton, is being paid by donors, including the nonprofit groups backed by Mr. Omidar. And he's the founder of eBay and publisher of The Intercept. Okay.
Yeah. Really the owner of The Intercept. Yeah. The owner of The Intercept.
So, but this is really interesting. He is also a major donor to a shady new group calling himself Whistleblower Aid, bizarrely led by anti-Trump lawyer and social media resistance star Mark Zaid, who has been, or Zaid, I don't know if I'm saying it right, who has been one of the most vocal critics of actual whistleblowers, Ed Snowden and Julian Assange, both of whose imprisonment he has long demanded, that is now featuring Haugen as its star client. So it's just another example of the hypocrisy here. It's like, well, this is our whistleblower because it's this person is helping us prove our control tactics versus the people that are whistleblowers at great cost with no big media fanfare and literal governments trying to capture them are not given the time of day by these people. Oh, in fact, they're calling for their imprisonment, according to Glenn.
I mean, that's not just according to Glenn. I mean, it's true. Mark Zaid, I think his name is. Yeah, no, over the years, I've seen him. He literally, he calls himself a whistleblower lawyer, but he's constantly shitting on our most important whistleblowers like Edward Snowden.
Yeah.
And Julian Assange. I mean, just think about that. That makes no sense at all. So he's obviously a fraud. It's obviously bullshit. And anybody he represents is probably not a real whistleblower because he shits on real whistleblowers. And so the Facebook whistleblower sounds like bullshit. According to, after reading that, sure sounds like it. I have not heard much of what they have to say because I've been busy trying to rescue myself from falling into the memory hole completely. And have you heard of the Facebook Oversight Board? That's a new thing too. Have you heard of this, Allison?
I've heard inklings of it, but I'm not super familiar with what exactly its purpose is. Okay,
so this is my first time experience in it. So now what used to happen? Okay, you lose your appeal, and that's it. So now they've added this other step, and it's kind of like a Supreme Court in the sense that, they only accept a few select cases. And they say that at the end, it will review a select number of highly emblematic cases and determine if decisions were made in accordance with Facebook stated. So the chance of getting, applying through this and getting the case looked at is extremely low. However, I decided to take a look, and this is what happens. This is fucking mind-blowing. So I go through and nobody has, you don't have the option to submit to this board unless you've been censored. So I'm one of the people who've been censored. So I'm looking at it. So this is probably the first time many people are seeing it out there. And this is what it says. It says that basically at the bottom here, we will use your information, and basically in order to submit your case, you need to submit, quote, data with special protections. It says data with special protections. So what the fuck is data with special protections? Data with special protections. Oh, let me find it. Here we go. This is nuts. Okay.
Can you make that bigger?
This is freaky. Truly freaky. Okay. So it says that data with special protections is information about your racial or ethnic origin, political opinions, religious or philosophical beliefs, trade union membership, health, sex life,
What?
sexual orientation. Yes.
Dude, this
Criminal
is insane.
conviction. Yes. Criminal conviction or offenses. I mean, that's absolutely nuts that you by default are required to submit this incredibly personal data with special protections. That is insane. And that just proves that this whole thing is a sham. Like, it proves that the oversight board isn't picking any goddamn case or deciding any cases based on principle. You don't need any of that fucking information to determine that. You don't need my health information to determine that. You don't need my political opinions, religious beliefs, to know about my sex life or whether I'm a union member. That's insane. And then we go back here. So at the bottom, it says, again, data with special protections. There's two bubbles you can see, right? And I have to select both of them to be able to continue. You see that?
Yeah.
Now this one, data with special protections, it says, as you answer questions as part of your appeal, you may choose to provide data with special protections about yourself. And then it goes, you are not required to provide this information. But the bubble below it, which I have to select in order to continue to submit my case, it says, I agree to let Facebook process data with special protections. How insane is that? Can you all read that? I'll zoom it in more. So look at that. It says at the top, you may choose to provide data with special protections about yourself. You are not required to provide this kind of information. And then the bubble below, which I have to select in order to continue. Also, so you see that. So you see the difference. So you can see this. So look, I cannot continue if this is not selected. And I agree. I have to agree to let Facebook process data with special protections. And then it goes.
What does that mean, process data?
Process data. My guess is, I mean, it does something with all the data that Facebook and maybe anyone else has on me. You know, it doesn't specify.
Yeah. Right.
And so,
and this is why, Matt, I it's like the people who start talking about surveillance state stuff, and they get labeled like the tinfoil hat people of the internet. But how do you make sense of this otherwise? You know, like that they're just trying to get more and more data about people for whatever reason to use for surveillance purposes. I have a hard time arguing back against that when people bring that up, even though they get labeled conspiracy theorists. I don't see the point other than that.
I mean, in this case, I mean, this is a system that's supposed to help, supposedly designed to help people who might be dissidents, right? Who are saying stuff that some people don't want to hear, because it's, you know, it ends up getting censored. Because, you know, people don't think it should be heard, whether, you know, and there's some valid reasons, right? I mean, it could be inciting violence. But then
anyway, aren't they then just basically making categories like, oh, this kind of person said this?
Yeah.
Kind of thing?
It's super creepy. I mean, they're basically putting, this whole system does not appear to be something that would help, people trying to relieve their censorship. It looks like it's designed to create a database of dissidents, you know, and data on, like, that's what it seems like. And it certainly looks like it functions like that, or can function like that. I can't imagine it couldn't be used like that. And then let me say at the end here, it goes, the last sentence here is, I understand that I can withdraw this consent by going to case status and deleting my information. What the fuck? Like, but this is just insane. This is just insane. So you have to agree to it, but you don't have to agree to it. And then they make you agree to it. And in the agreement, say, well, you know, don't worry, just agree. You can unagree, but just agree. That's insane. That's fucking insane. What the fuck is going to case status? This is like another website. and then, I mean, are we really supposed to believe that you go to well, first of all, they're making you jump through all these hoops. How about not making me give it over in the first place?
Right. Well, and like someone saying in the chat that nothing is ever totally deleted. And that's where I kind of wonder when they're saying you can go and remove your approval, but what does that mean?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And delete my information. They don't delete our fucking information. You know, their whole business model is collecting and saving our information.
Right.
I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Wow. I didn't know about that.
I didn't either until I, seeing this myself. I've heard nobody talk about this. This is nuts. Okay.
I'm going to have to do another video from my channel about it.
Please do. Please do. All right, Allison, I know your producer will be waking up from their nap.
Yeah, she just, I can hear her right now. So I was hoping you guys couldn't hear her in the background, but.
So yeah, I mean, what do you want to leave us with about your case? Just what do you want to end on?
I guess honestly, the most important thing is for people to know that it's a really important time to just be aware and to just think critically about what's happening around us and try to avoid being harangued or grouped, shuffled into one or another tribe to like point and hate because someone's trying to keep you safe. And I think, like we've talked about this stream, a lot of the stuff, whether it's my situation or what you're showing with Facebook and what happened to you, is in the name of safety. And I think it's more important than ever for us to really sit down and think, are these policies in place to keep us safe? Or is there something else happening here? And if there was only one result of the work that I did, and that was that people just said, I just want to look for more information, or I just want to ask some questions and not just make assumptions and just trust whatever I'm getting as the popular narrative, and those people are dangerous. And that's why I have to push back on their not having one or another right to speak or to go to a restaurant or whatever else. Just sit back for a second and try to detach from that. I really feel like it's an intentional push to suppress our critical thinking skills in the name of safety. And so if all I do is just encourage people to look at like, oh, this is happening to pretty mainstream people, the efforts to silence, the efforts to divide and conquer. This is really happening. This isn't just in the name of safety. There are other reasons behind this. And then you just start on your own journey of self-awareness, not to tell you what to think, but just to start thinking. That, I think, is what I really hope happens in my case, just to encourage people to think and to stand up for your right to do so, your right to think, your right to ask questions, your right to associate with people who are different, your right to speak, all of these things that were not crazy that long ago, but have now been dangled in front of us as very dangerous activities. Let's just sit back and think for a second if this is really about public safety.
Yeah. Thank you, Alison Morrow. And I would just add, regardless of what the intention is, even if the intention is public safety, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And it doesn't take much thinking. I encourage everyone to think critically, but it shouldn't take you too long to see that this is kind of systems where we have literal memory holes. We're creating literal memory holes. That ain't good in the long run. That doesn't protect anybody but those who get to make those decisions about what goes in the memory hole. So
yeah, and that the people who make those decisions are the ones who have a significant amount of control and power, and it's not always going to be your team. So
yep,
that's
yep.
I think why we have to like really be aware of that tribalism and the messaging that's moving us in that direction, because someday it'll be, you know, your adversary who you think should be silent. Someday, you know, maybe they're in charge and now it's your speech or whatever else that is on the chopping block. But being short-sighted, we set the throne up for that king or queen by creating it for our own side. And I just think it's a short-sighted, like censorship. I think you've said it too. Like it's a very short-sighted solution that creates many more problems down the road.
Yes, we need to stop calling each other, you know, attacking each other as, you know, left wing, right wing, and just freaking work together on this Orwellian censorship. Like this should be a priority, I think.
Mhm.
And I know you do a great job pushing back on this, and you know, it's amazing. It's hitting you even more directly than just YouTube takedowns, and your actual job is lost. And I mean, I'm confident that the community will rally behind you. There are many people in this country, you know, want to protect free speech, and we will rally behind you if you choose to go forward with you know, legally.
You know, Matt, what I think has been interesting, just kind of talking to people who have suffered one or another consequence for pushing back on narratives, or not even doing, you know, just not necessarily always being a mouthpiece for for what is acceptable thought or speech, is that once you see it happening to you, like I'm guessing for you, when you had your situation with the Bernie campaign, was that a significant change for, like, did you start seeing cancel culture differently after that? Because it was like, wow, I've seen how terms like racist or whatever can be used against people in a way that's totally inaccurate.
I was always aware of that. I was
Okay.
always aware of it. I really was. Because I was always aware, like, you know, I had a background with comedic videos that I knew damn well, you know, the same kind of bullshit people were using, or saying about other people, you know, the same kind of tactics, smear tactics could be used against me and anybody.
Right. With
Anybody.
words like misinformation or
Yeah.
whatever else.
Yeah.
They're
And
just big terms thrown around.
and although the one, you know, I saw it happening, I was very afraid. I mean, really very freaky stuff. I mean, I remember the Brett Weinstein at Evergreen, when, you know, he was getting attacked like by a mob of students, at least verbally, just a mob around him, you know, yelling at him, calling him racist. Um, and he hadn't done anything racist. He had just said, you know, maybe we shouldn't force some people of, you know, we shouldn't force a race of people to not come to school on one day. You know, it
Yeah.
was a strange story, very strange story. And that was, he was the racist for saying we shouldn't you know, maybe we
Mhm.
shouldn't force people to segregate.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
by race. So, I mean, that's, I was like, and it wasn't getting covered in most of the media. And I saw that, I'm like,
Mhm.
this is terrifying. But
Yeah.
at the time, I was also very concerned about growing economic inequality. And, you know, our healthcare system is very flawed. And I just, you know, I kept my focus on that because I thought there was an opportunity to really address some of these problems seriously, with, you know, through a Bernie Sanders campaign and presidency. But I mean, there's no doubt though that this censorship issue, this our dwindling freedom of speech and of the press. I mean, look at the Assange case. I mean, the First Amendment is just crumbling. And that is just as big an issue, if not a bigger issue. It might even be a bigger issue. Because if you don't have the freedom of expression, free speech, you can't change anything in government. You're not going to. If government is working with social big tech as it is, you're not going to be able to message and create any kind of effective movement to challenge that power when that power has its hands on institutions that can silence, your dissent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like it is really the issue of our lifetime, at least for now. Because every other big issue, like you're talking about, whether it's healthcare, anything, if you can't talk about it, you can't address it. So talking is really, to me, it's like the central issue right now, and then everything else comes after that. Because how can you deal with anything if you can't talk about it?
Yeah, I agree.
I'm getting an SOS from my husband right now, Matt.
All right. Go check in with your producer.
Thanks for having me.
Awake. All right. Thanks again for joining me. And I know we'll be speaking again if for no other reason one of us is censored again.
Right. But hey, at least neither one of us will probably be fired again, because that already happened.
Yeah. It ain't good. No, yeah. I'm probably not going to get hired after this.
Right. Exactly.
So please, everyone go support Alison at Locals. And if you can, help me out on Patreon. Thanks again, Alison.
Thanks, everyone.
Peace out. Ending broadcast.